Beautiful lettuce, broccoli, and greens in my garden. A show full of summer delights coming up next. Hi, I'm Alan Smith. Welcome to the show. Can you believe summer is almost over? I'm just going through some of these seed packs from last year because it's time for me to start thinking about my fall vegetable garden. But before we get too caught up in the cooler temperatures of September and October, let's focus a little bit on the bounty of this summer. For a look at the vivid colors of the season, we'll visit the Kokenhof Garden in Holland, where bulbs are in bloom in all shapes, forms, and sizes. What a beaut! I'll show off some containers that could fit for both a hot or a cool color scheme. Plus, we'll take a look at some plants for both of these color palettes. We'll also go out to my new garden home where we'll talk about building raised beds. And as a finishing touch, we'll stop in at the Viking Cooking School in Greenwood, Mississippi. It's a full show coming up right after this. Welcome back. You know, color for some of us can be a challenge, but it really doesn't have to be if you distill down a few principles to follow. For instance, I break color down into 3 categories: cools, neutrals, and warms. And what I have here are containers and plants that fit in the cool and warm categories. Now, if you want to bring color into your garden, but you want to make it harmonic, stick with one color family. For instance, if you wanted to pot up some of these gorgeous containers, which come in a wide range of blues and greens, you might match the color of this gorgeous, luxurious glaze with flowers, such as Terrenia, Blue Victoria Salvia, or this salvia, which I think is really handsome. This is called Blue Angel. It's Salvia patens, which will flower with these beautiful blue bracts until the first frost. Now, if you really get on a cool kick, you can accent your garden with a paint color that reflects the cool color theme, or objects such as this beautiful glazed sphere, or even bring in fabrics that echo this color theme. Now, if your idea is to go with something a little warmer, you might use terracotta. It definitely falls in the warm category. And you might use a plant like this, which is a wonderful hummingbird magnet. This is called Hyssop coronado, and you can see the blooms are almost a dead match to these terracotta pots. And the other great thing about it is that it's a perennial. It is hardy up to 20 degrees below zero. So it's one you may want to consider planting in your garden or keep it in containers. Now, some other warm colored plants to think about include osteospermum, lemon symphony, superbell's red calibrachoa, and of course crocosmia. This is one of my favorites. It's called Lucifer. Just keep in mind that yellows, golds, reds, and oranges are a natural in the hot color category of plants. But if a hot palette isn't your thing, here's some cool colored plants you might want to consider: angel face blue angelonia and Intensia Cabernet phlox. Just look at its intense magenta color. This little bluebird nemesia is a real charmer. And Scaevola Blue Wonder will grow in the hottest places. Up next, we'll head out to my new garden home, where we're creating some raised beds, and I'll give you some tips on planting fall vegetables. You know, the fall will be here before we know it, and you know what that means: beautiful lettuce, broccoli, and greens in my garden. And a little later, our chef shows us some tips for grilling shrimp, so stick around. Oxalis is an old-fashioned plant that I remember as a kid. We called it the big clover because it looked like a shamrock. The dark leaves of charmed velvet are nearly black, and they're even more eye-catching when contrasted with the plant's blush pink flowers. Normally, I don't recommend dark plants for shady areas, but this is an exception. It creates a sense of mystery, and it can have a beautiful contrasting effect when coupled with other plants, such as plants with variegated or silver foliage. Organic, organic, organic. I can't emphasize it enough. And that's what this vegetable garden is all about here at the Garden Home. You see, not only is the soil here organic, but the methods we use to take care of the plants, as well as the materials I'm using. For instance, with these raised beds, we're using real cedar, western red cedar, because it is organic. Now, I've been raising vegetables in raised beds for a long time. I love it because it helps me to organize the space with these geometric patterns. The other thing that's great about it is since the soil is above ground in the raised bed, the soil warms in the spring earlier, which allows you to get a jump on the season. These beds will rest in the soil like this, and because they're made of rot-resistant western red cedar, they'll be here for years and years. Now, I considered using some other wood, such as cypress or redwood, and I also thought about treated timbers, but since this is a vegetable garden and I wanted to keep things chemical-free, well, I chose the red cedar. Remember, organic, organic, organic. Now, I want to point out another advantage to having these raised beds, and that's that you can create your own soil. If you have really poor soil and you're frustrated by it, create some raised beds and then mix your own blend. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm using 1 part existing topsoil, 1 part sand, and 1 part humus, which could be in the form of peat moss, bag topsoil, or even your homemade compost. Now, another thing I like about them is that once I get them in place, they're like little canvases that I get to paint on, well, I should say plant on, in every season. And some of the vegetables that I enjoy in the spring, summer, and fall, well, those are really the paints that I use to paint these pictures. But let's start with spring, with one of my favorites, lettuce. I've become fascinated with lettuce. I suppose it's because there's so many different varieties to choose from. I like the subtle differences in their flavor. I want to try them all. In fact, this year, I'm going to plant 8 different varieties. Buttercrunch is one of my all-time favorites, and I also enjoy the more heat-resistant red sale, and another one with reddish leaves called red oak leaf. These can all be grown easily from seed, and they'll germinate in just a few days after covering them with only a dusting of soil and a light spray of water and liquid fertilizer. Now, once the lettuce finishes up by early summer, I'll be ready to plant my tomatoes. Growing your own tomatoes is a big part of the summer gardening experience. Millions of us, whether we grow anything else or not, always plant a few tomatoes. As plants go in gardens and containers across the country, there are a few things that might be helpful in choosing the plants. There are 2 broad categories of tomatoes. One is called determinate. Now, this just means the plants grow to a determined size, depending on the variety, say in the 2 to 4 foot range. On the other hand, indeterminate types of tomatoes don't grow to just a limited size. They keep growing and growing, often to 8 feet or more. You know, a tomato is a vine after all. As you can imagine, you'd need more room to grow these, and most people agree that indeterminate types seem to taste better. These are the heirloom or old-fashioned varieties that were grown hundreds of years ago. To avoid problems with disease, it's recommended to plant tomatoes in different places in your garden from year to year, and to plant several varieties. The plant breeders have also been helping us fight disease. If you look at a tag closely, you'll see certain letters like VFN. These letters actually symbolize the diseases this plant is resistant to. So the more letters there are, the more disease resistant the plant is. When I select individual plants, I try to avoid those with blooms or crowded roots. The ideal height is about 10 to 12 inches tall and with a deep green color. Earlier in the show, we saw a nice range of containers during our visit to Pleasant View Gardens, and that prompted me to recall a couple of viewer questions that have come across my desk lately about containers. The first one asked, I think my container has a fungus or something on it. It's terracotta, but it's turning white. What should I do? You know, I use a lot of terracotta or clay pots in my garden, and I find that this is a good time of year to care for them. If you clean your containers after using them, you can reduce the chances of passing disease from one planting or season to the next. I like to soak my smaller terracotta pots in a 10% bleach solution for about 30 minutes to kill any pathogens. Or these small containers can be put directly in the dishwasher for sterilization. The discoloration on these pots is caused by salt buildup from fertilizer. I make a paste of baking soda and a little water to make it easier to clean these salt rings. If you live where winter temperatures drop below freezing and you keep your containers outdoors, you'll want to protect them. There are products formulated to help repel the water that gets into the pores of the clay. You see, it's the freezing and expansion of the ice crystals that causes the clay to crack and crumble. Now I've been bragging about this shrimp dish throughout this show, and just after this break, we'll get the step-by-step on putting this recipe together from a chef at the Viking Cooking School. Here at the Viking Cooking School in Greenwood, Mississippi, they're always experimenting with good things from the garden. Chef Jeffrey Bates gave us a lesson on how to use shrimp on the grill.
Today we're going to do a big, bold, beautiful shrimp recipe. It's called Tamarind Glazed Grilled Shrimp, and we're going to use a tamarind paste today. Tamarind is a tropical seed pod. It is used in many Asian dishes, particularly Thai dishes, and you can find it in your Asian market. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our blender and we're going to add our tamarind paste to the blender. It's about 4 ounces or a half cup of tamarind paste. All right, and we also have 1 cup of warm water. Add that to your blender. Also have 3 tablespoons of honey. All right. We also have a 1/4 cup of soy sauce. And we're going to take some fresh ginger. I'm going to use my microplane here. The microplane zester. It's a really great tool for the kitchen. Use it for your zest, for your lemons and limes. It also works for ginger, hard cheeses, things like that. We do about 2 tablespoons of ginger. Got to tap it and get it down in there a little bit. All right, we'll get the rest of that ginger in there. And we'll go to some garlic here. We've got a clove of garlic. And I like to use these garlic presses. This is a stainless steel garlic press. Very simple. You just put your garlic clove in there. Take your knife. Shave it in there. You're ready to go. And we're going to finish this up with a little habanero pepper sauce. Habanero is a very, very spicy pepper. And be careful if you ever work with this to wash your hands and don't touch your eyes. And we'll move this over to the blender. Put our lid on here. Mix that up real quick. And what we want to do is cook this at medium-high for about 10 minutes. We want to make a glaze. This is going to thicken up, and it's going to become a nice glaze for us for our shrimp. Okay, once our tamarind glaze cools to room temperature, we're going to add about half of it to the shrimp here. Put that aside. All right, and once we get all this mixed up, we want to refrigerate this for about 30 minutes to an hour. Let that marinate before we grill it. All right, now that these have been in the refrigerator for about an hour, we're gonna skewer these and get them on the grill. I like to run the skewer from the head in all the way through. Kind of come out in the tail. Keeps them nice and straight. And I think I'll put about 2 shrimp on each one. All right, now that we've skewered all of our shrimp, we're gonna move over to the grill. I'm working with an indoor grill today. It's a nice product here where we've got it cleaned and we've already got it oiled. Make sure your grill surface is very clean and either rub some oil or spray some oil on there. While it's not lit, of course, you don't want it to flame up. So we're gonna put our shrimp on the hot grill here. Not gonna cook for very long. Give them probably about 3 minutes per side. Okay, now that our shrimp are finished, we'll take them off the grill. And we're gonna brush them with our reserved tamarind glaze that we put to the side earlier. Just finish them off here. Sauce will glaze them very nicely. That beautiful flavor on them. And there we go, there's our tamarind glazed grilled shrimp.
In this garden I dream of a bed of flowers. Bluebirds sing of the beauty all around us. And every time the sun comes out, I can't help but smile. Oh, no, I can't help but smile.